This is the Brew Party Podcast. Episode number 71 is live. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host that definitely doesn't know the most, Andy Hopper, checking in once again. How about that? So this is episode 71 of the Brew Party Podcast, and it's a very good episode. So the past couple episodes, we've been doing twofers. We've been doubling up on interviews. This time, it is just one interview, but it's an interview with two people, two very good friends of the program. You know them. You love them. They jump on the show to help me break down what the hell is going on in Chicago with the Chicago Cubs on the north side at Wrigley Field in Wrigleyville. They have gutted their roster, ladies and gentlemen. They sold everybody off at the trade deadline about a week ago. So to help me break that down, to help me kind of figure out what it means for the Cubs, what it means for their system as a whole, it is the two distinguished hosts of the Growing Cubs podcast, Greg Huss and Jimmy Nelligan, join the Brew Party Podcast once again. Two of our favorite recurring guests from one of our favorite podcasts. You can go check out all of their work on Growing Cubs, a Chicago prospects podcast presented by Cubs Insider, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, and go ahead and follow them on Instagram at Growing Cubs Pod. You can find all of their work on Cubs Insider, especially if you are a Cubs fan. Cubs Insider is a must follow. They have a lot of great Chicago Cubs content. So Jimmy and Greg joined the show to break down the trades, kind of why all of this happened, what is going on in the front office, what prospects we should be looking forward to seeing in a Chicago Cub uniform, what the timeline for this rebuild is like, their thoughts on Jed Hoyer, their thoughts on losing Rizzo, KB, Bryant, all of that stuff. I think this is an awesome interview. Even if you're not a Cub fan, we kind of peek into what this was like, this trade deadline where the entire World Series 2016 core was just kind of obliterated. They had just blown up, blown to smithereens, as people like to say. But yeah, it's just interesting because they really didn't get, there was no kind of ceremonious exit. They didn't get their last at bat with the standing ovation and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. We talk Rizzo to the Yankees. We talk KB to the Giants, Baez to the Mets, all the other moves that the Cubs made as well. Great stuff with Jimmy and Greg. As always, want to thank them so much for joining the show. And, I mean, congratulations to them. They are now I think they got as high as number 24 on the baseball charts for podcasts. So, I am not worthy. Look at you guys go. So congratulations to the Growing Cubs podcast. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode. Excited for everybody to hear it. We're going to get you into that interview. We're going to be talking Cubs, figuring out what the hell is going on in Chicago. I think I titled the episode, "This is Fine." And I hope you guys get that. It is the dog sitting in the room that's burning, drinking coffee, just going, "This is fine," because that is what Chicago Cubs Nation feels like, I assume. So before we get you into the interview with Greg and Jimmy, let's do some plugs real quick. So you can find this podcast, you can find the Brew Party wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, wherever you get your podcast. You just go to www.thebrewparty.com. It's got links to listen to every show. It's got links to all of our social media. Speaking of our social media, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Brew Party. We are on Facebook at The Brew Party Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube, youtube.com/The Brew Party, and make sure you leave a like on our latest video. Yeah, I don't really have much else for this little intro. This interview with Greg and Jimmy goes for about an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm not going to keep you here too long. We're going to keep the episode under an hour and a half. Look at me go. Hell yeah. Quickly, though, I will tell you we have some schedule updates. So football season is right around the corner. I will be going back to From the Stands College Sports with Brian McCardle and Tom Scavetta. We're going to be bringing you weekly football content, college football content. Super excited about that. Ryan Maloney will be making his illustrious return to the Brew Party podcast for Maloney's Moneyline. I'm trying to shoot for the first week of NFL football. So I think that's like the week of like September 9th or something like that. So we're going to figure that out. But super excited to get Ryan back on the show, get you guys our terrible picks coming at you, or my terrible picks. Hopefully we get hot this year. We might not lose. We might not lose. So let's get you into this interview with Greg Huss and Jimmy Nelligan from the Growing Cubs podcast, breaking down what the hell is going on in Chicago after last week's trade deadline. This is a great episode. We keep it light, we keep it funny, but it's also really informative, like I like to do on this show quite a bit. So this is the Brew Party Podcast, episode number 71. I'm Andy Hopper. Let's get you into this interview with Greg Huss and Jimmy Nelligan from the Growing Cubs podcast, presented by Cubs Insider. Here we are once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Brew Party Podcast, joined by two familiar faces, two distinguished guests, two recurring guests on the program, very good friends of the program from the Growing Cubs podcast. Might I say the top 25 baseball podcast in the world? How the fuck are we? It's Greg Huss. It's Jimmy Nelligan. They are here to help us make some sense of what the hell is going on in Chicago at Wrigley Field and with the Cubs after all of their moves, pretty much gutting their core. So, Greg, Jimmy, how are you guys doing?
That's an introduction, man.
I am also gutted.
You're also gutted, yeah. I guess that I try to put an over under on the how quick it'll take somebody to cry. I said probably 4.5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. So before we get into everything, talk about your podcast a little bit, because you guys are rising. You are the Growing Cubs podcast, a Chicago prospect podcast. You cover all of the Cubs minor leagues, and this must have been a pretty big day, pretty big last episode for you guys, trying to make sense of all these moves that the Cubs just made.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where with this episode, I mean, we've spent the last, we're on year 3 now talking about Cubs prospects, and the Cubs have been actually like good, so people haven't really cared quite as much about what's going on in the minor leagues. So we've been staying pretty steady with our listenership out there, but it's one of those things where as soon as the Cubs, we knew that as soon as the Cubs were going to start trading off all their stars, that people would focus in on the Cubs prospects, and that happened a little bit quicker than we would have probably hoped the major league team do that. But I mean, now it's kind of our time to shine now. I feel like with people interested in what's going on in the minor league system, and we're there to talk about it. Last episode, it was hard. I mean, I'll speak for myself at least. The last episode was hard, just because we spend time getting to know these guys that are in the Cubs farm system. But then when we get like 10 different new prospects in these trades for Rizzo and Bryant and Baez, it's like we had like a weekend to learn these guys before we had an entire episode to talk about them in their entirety. So Jimmy, I don't know how you felt about it, but I was pretty stressed.
Yeah, it still has taken some time to kind of form opinions. And what was yesterday, Sunday? Like all the pitchers pretty much that we acquired over the deadline all had like starts. So I mean, even then it's like everyone's starting at the same time. I gotta like flip back and forth between different games to kind of see like who's who and just get like a good first impression, just from my own perspective. But yeah, this has definitely been our time to shine with the podcast. Kind of years before, especially with like COVID, we didn't even have like a minor league baseball season to really like even talk about. So we did like a full year of the podcast without a season, just trying to like fill time with interviews and stuff. But now, we have a season going on. Marquis even been showing some of the Iowa Cubs games. So I think there's more people, like just the average fan, getting interested in the Cubs system a little bit more. And I think the Cubs are doing a better job now at like kind of, I think, marketing that a little bit to the average fan a little bit more. So I think we're getting some of those guys kind of going in and listening to us. And it's been really awesome, having all the new listeners and kind of just seeing the people that have, listened to the show the past 3 years.
Yeah, Andy, I don't know how you do it, man. Like, I don't know how you do like this podcast where, I mean, Jimmy and I talk about the same like topic every week. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like you are in here, you have a different guest each week and a different topic. I don't know how you do your prep each week for something completely different. It's insane to me.
Very carefully, and because if it was just me, nobody would listen. So no, but I'm a procrastinator when it comes to prep. Like I don't want anybody to think I'm spending like days and days working on it. Usually the day of I'll start going in a few hours before, making sure I have some basis knowledge. But yeah, dude, I really appreciate that compliment. It is. I was actually just talking to Jimmy about it before we started. It was like, because you guys do have that one niche thing. I kind of have this broad thing every week. I'm kind of like, all right, what the fuck do I want to talk about? Or like, we're just talking about reaching out to guests and having people reach out to me, which is like bizarro world to me, by the way, if anybody like wants to be on this show. But anyway, before we get into the Cubs stuff, how great has it been actually having minor league baseball back, especially for you guys who that's like how you live and breathe? And how different is it from after the COVID year?
I feel like, first of all, it's since the minor league season started up in early May, I've watched very few Chicago Cubs baseball games because I've just been diving into the minor league stuff, and especially now when the best player on the team is Rafael Ortega. I'm not exactly
shout out.
They're not shouting for me to watch their product. So it's been fun watching those games. I mean, going the full year, and I was watching a lot of like replays of games and trying to like break down each player. It's nice to just like tune into a game and just like watch it in its entirety and all that good stuff. But I feel like it's been different watching these players play this year, just because I think there's been a lot more injuries. Because I mean, it's different practicing and throwing bullpens and like taking batting practice compared to like playing real life baseball games, and their bodies are used differently. There's a lot more injuries. A lot more. I wish there were more prospects to watch, but some have been going down with injuries.
Yeah, and I think actually physically going to baseball games has been really awesome. I don't know, like there's just something about like minor league games that's just you don't get with the like major league experience. I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like so amateur. It's like a little bit better in this sense. Like there's just like they're doing like the little thing with like the bat where you just spin around in a circle and try and see like who can run the farthest between innings. They'll just like do like a bunch of like promos and like just fun shit like that. And I don't know. I think there's like something really cool about just like finding that favorite player too, or like that favorite prospect of yours and kind of seeing them like take that next step into like the majors and like just kind of noticing them before like the average fan does. That's like really cool.
Dude, I've been to. Oh, sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like being able to go like into actual games and like being able to see that. Me and Greg, we spent some time in Indy to watch the Iowa Cubs play, and then later on this month, I'm about to go over to Peoria and catch South Bend Cubs play the Chiefs over there. And yeah, just that experience. I mean, it's something I really missed, with the COVID year, and I'm just glad I got back to it.
I've been to a lot of games over here in Columbus, and I got to see Iowa the whole week there over here. But it cracks me up. Like you mentioned, like the promos, like between innings, Jimmy. And I swear to God, like so there, one of these innings, like one of these in between innings activities, they have like a hot dog race where like these people dressed up in the mascot. It's not even a mascot because it's a hot dog, but like three different. There's like a ketchup, mustard, and relish, right? And I swear to God, the fans get more hype for those races than the actual games themselves. Like. The crowd goes wild for those hot dog races. It's insane. And it's like that's minor league baseball. That's perfect. I love it.
When I was in high school, I was over at it's when the Peoria Chiefs were still like a Cubs affiliate, and I was over there. And they did this promo, like or Burger King did it or whatever. So like they pick a player, and if that player strikes out, like one seat gets a free Whopper. If he strikes out again, like that whole row gets a Whopper, and then if he strikes out again, it's like the whole section, and then he strikes out again, it's like the whole stadium. And this dude struck out like 3 or 4 times. He's one strikeout away from the whole stadium getting like a full, like all like getting free Whoppers. And this guy has 2 strikes, and the entire stadium is just chanting like Whopper. And it's like 1,000 people there or whatever. And this poor dude is like 19 years old. He's having a terrible day at the plate, and he's just listening to fans just chant Whopper at him. Like, you don't get that at Wrigley Field.
Did he strike out?
No, he didn't. I didn't get my free Whopper. But.
Man, that's a guy you want to bet on to be good in major leagues.
Was it an opposing player or somebody on the Chiefs?
I think it was an opposing player because it was back when like the Cubs were the affiliate. I don't think they'd bet on their own player.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Shit. So when you guys were in Indy, you got to be in the booth for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Did you get a little nervous being on live air? Would we have a few and kind of trying to figure out what the hell you wanted to say?
Jimmy, I'll let you lead that one off.
I am like a terrible public speaker to begin with. I always do like ums or uhs and have like really awkward pauses. But like there. But yeah, like Alex Cohen is such a good broadcaster. Like he did such a good job at making us, or like I don't know, speaking for myself, he did such a good job at making me feel comfortable and being able just to like fill space in between and just do like 3 different things at once. Like that guy can call a game, he can tweet, he can like I don't know, like shake our hand when we walk in the booth. Like that guy's doing like 3 things at a time. He's thinking about the game ahead of time. He's like filling out like a scorecard. Like that dude he's just incredible at what he does at his job. And I don't know, he made me feel really uncomfortable, but just like that whole experience was so surreal. Like we had to like go up into the press box. We were like on a list, had to get like escorted up there. Like it was a lot. And I don't know, we were just on like Iowa AM radio.
The Des Moines, yeah, like Hope AM or something like that. Yeah. No, but you're right though. Like it's like he's so like Alex Cohen. He's so damn. I mean, they're all like a lot of these broadcasters are this way. But like you're right. Like he will be calling like, all right, and Corey Abbott delivers the pitch on an 0-2. It's on the outside black, and like he's just saying that stuff. But while he's speaking that stuff, he is also like planning out what he's going to ask me and Jimmy next. And it's like. It's amazing the way his like mind works, and you're right. Like he's also tweeting about like what player just went yard while he's talking. It's like it's insane what that guy does. I got the chance to go on with him in when they came over to Columbus too, when Iowa did, and it's the same thing, man. It's just like it's amazing how good he is at his craft.
Absolutely. Do you guys ever think like starting a podcast, you'd be in the booth for some of these games? Like what was it like seeing the game from that side?
It's a kind of, I never expected to do something like that. I didn't know coming into this podcast. I had no idea what to expect. I mean, like our bosses at like, at the time it was just me. I was like writing at Cubs Insider. My boss was like, "Hey, like, you want to start a minor league Cubs podcast?" And I was like, "Sure, I guess." I've never really hosted a podcast, but I've never like been on a podcast before, but sure, why not? And he was like, "All right, you got to find a co-host." I was like, "All right, Jimmy, like you're coming on."
Yeah.
And I as we've gone along with this, I've just like not really had a mindset of like where this is going to take us, but it's been pretty sweet to like go on and be on that radio call. But you're right, though. It's different being on a radio call than being on a podcast where you can edit anything out that you want. Where it's like if you fuck up, like you fuck up, like that's not good. So having someone like kind of guide us through everything has been pretty nice. Another thing is like with the broadcast, everything that you say as like analysis or commentary or whatever, like you have to say it within the time frame of the pitch, because when the next pitch comes in, it's on radio. So the play-by-play guy needs to call what that pitch is, and so you have to cut yourself off at that pitch coming in. And you can't just like stop talking. Like you have to complete your thought by the time that pitch comes in. So that was kind of wild.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Just that whole, I'm trying to think of like if I said like anything really bad. Like I'm just trying to think about it. Like I just almost like blacked out for like that entire half inning. I remember Nico Horner hit one to the track, and I remember thinking in my head, just like, don't drop an F-bomb, like on live air. And that was pretty much like all I remember. I don't even know what we talked about. Like, I think he just asked about like how my weekend was over there, like watching the game or something like that. But I have no idea what I said. And I don't even like want to go and like look back and try and listen to it or anything like that. I'm good just like keeping it where it's at, but yeah.
Well, you're right. Nico hit one to the track, and he was like calling it, and you just go, oh, like you just like he was like, oh wow,
oh wow, hard hitting color commentary from Jimmy Nelligan. So let's get into this, boys. We're gonna start this off. Let's just explain what the hell is happening for any of you fucking casuals out there that don't pay attention to baseball. So the Cubs have gutted their roster. I want you guys to kind of explain quickly, like, what the hell is going on. Rizzo, KB, Baez, Kimbrel, Tepera, Peterson, Marisnik, Chafin, Williams, all gone. Significant names there, especially the first 3, that core that brought the 2016 World Series. So why? What is going on in Chicago?
So the big deal with like the trades were that a lot of those guys, like outside of Kimbrel, all those guys were on 1-year deals or like on the last year of their contract. So if they did not trade Baez, Bryant, Rizzo, all those other guys, then they would have become free agents at the end of the year. You risk losing them to free agency and not getting anything in return, basically, is what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And with the Cubs not being very good, even with them prior to like the trade deadline, I think that the front office's mindset was, all right, let's just deal all these guys, get as much back as we can in return as far as prospects, and then hopefully they'll go try to re-sign them in the offseason. Now, I don't know how likely that is, but I think it's more just trying to get stuff back for these guys and not just lose them for nothing. But also at the same time, like what it comes down to is from a fan's perspective, it's you can extend these guys. You can extend at least two of these big three between Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez. Because after this year, the Cubs have like less than $80 million on the books for their roster. And I mean, it's $80 million. It sounds like a shit ton of money. But when like the luxury tax is like 210, that's a whole lot of money to work with. So you could have extended those guys. That's why I think a lot of fans are upset, is because you could still extend those guys and they just didn't. So that's the unfortunate part about all that. But I get from if you feel like you can't extend them for some reason, then that's why you trade them. But it still sucks a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know, like there's some comments too that like was made about like how they really tried, especially like on Jed's end, about how he felt they made really good offers to them, and I feel like there really wasn't much like talk about extension. I think this was something that we could see coming on for the past like year or two, especially after the Darvish trade and after Theo kind of resigned. I think this was almost like in the books, unless we just put up a like miraculous season where we're like 15 games ahead in first place or something like that, like something ridiculous where we would need to be buyers. And this kind of had a long time coming. And I don't know, like it's really sad to see. And at first I think I was a little bit more like open to it, like I think this was more like the end of an era, and now we're getting like some good players back in return. And now we have a chance to kind of like rebuild our core. But like just the way that like Jed handled it with the media almost just like left a sour taste in my mouth. Because before, like, you got to realize, like, Jed, like, he was one of the first guys to really like believe in Rizzo. Like, he acquired him in Boston. He went over to San Diego. He acquired him over there. He went to the Cubs and he acquired him over there. Like, this dude is believed in Rizzo like the entire time he's been in the front office, pretty much. Like, he's acquired him 3 times. And I can understand, like, before, I don't know, he kind of made those comments, I could kind of see it being like really difficult for him to kind of like, tell him like, we're trading you, like we're not going to be, extending you. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe there's like the door open. He could have like left the door open for some sort of like extension in the off season, like Greg was saying, instead of like kind of burning a bridge and not having the opportunity to really re-sign these guys at all. I don't know. I think as like a GM, I would rather have us kind of reevaluate ourselves in a couple years, see where those prospects are at then, and then kind of see, the free agent market, who we're going to sign and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't like how he handled the situation at all. He definitely burned some bridges, and I don't know. It kind of is what it is. But that's like the thing that left like the, like, I don't know, the sourest taste in my mouth, I guess, like out of all the deadline stuff.
So he was quoted on Chicago radio saying, this is the most frustrating part of this era, or the most frustrating thing he's had to do as part of the Cubs. Do you guys think this was the right thing to do?
I'll let you answer that, Greg.
I don't know the answer to that, dude. I don't. Like, I'm sure he thinks it was, for what that's worth. I don't know what that's worth, but I'm sure Jed Hoyer, the general manager, thinks it was the right move. But to me, it's just you have taken yourself out of the running. I think Jimmy's right. I think he's burned the bridges enough. I think maybe the trade was rewind a little bit. I think maybe the trades were okay if you have a good relationship with these players that you can bring them back in this offseason. But he traded the players, and then he comes on Chicago radio and says, we offered these guys money, like it's all their fault that they didn't sign. And like that's not, and then all the players, like Rizzo bounced back with it and was like, oh, well, like the common denominator here is Jed Hoyer, not the players. So like he is the one who did not offer us enough money. And it's like he's burning some bridges here. So I can see a scenario where he was on the right track of things, but then you can't like blow things up afterwards and say, all the players suck, we hate them, they're awful. Like, it's because now you can't go re-sign those players. And it looks bad for trying to sign other players too. Like outside just those Cubs guys, like Corey Seager won't want to come play for the Cubs when the GM throws the players under the bus, or Trevor Story or Freddie Freeman or whoever it is, And so I just think that Theo Epstein, when he was with the Cubs, was such a smooth talker. Like he would go on his press conferences and his radio calls and stuff like that and just be super smooth. Whether he was telling the truth or not, like he had convinced you that like he knew what he was doing and he was smooth as hell. Jed Hoyer has not been that way so far as the man in charge. And I feel like when you're the president of baseball operations, like it's good to make some good moves, but also you got to like put on a face like you are the man up there. And Jed Hoyer has not done that yet.
Yeah, I think on paper, the trade, I'm not like upset with it. I think there's an opportunity for us to get some guys that could be like part of a core in Chicago. And like Greg said, with these guys being at the last year of their deal, us not being a very good team right now, like it makes sense to kind of trade them. But yeah, I think it's just all the stuff that he did like after the deadline, like I said, like that's, I don't know, it's not good for the organization in general. But like on paper, I think we got some guys that can definitely make like an impact in Chicago here in like 3 or 4 years when we're kind of ready to compete again. But I know that's going to piss off a lot of fans who kind of want us to act like a big market team, just be the Dodgers and just like, or the Yankees and just sign the best players in free agency, every year. But the Cubs are never that team. And I don't know, it just kind of is what it is at that point.
But spoiler alert, we should be. The Cubs should be a big market team. Yeah. Like that's the thing is that there are all these like different incentives in place for teams like the Cardinals or teams like the Brewers and the Red. Basically, everybody else in our division, the Cardinals, Reds, Brewers, Pirates, are all set up in ways that they know they're a small market team, so they get an extra few draft picks, or they get other competitive advantages because they can't just go out and spend crazy money on these players. The Cubs don't get that because they're expected to spend a shit ton of money on free agents. And they haven't done that. Like since like Yu Darvish, they haven't done that at all. And that was like what, 3 years ago? And then they went and traded his contract away because they said they couldn't afford it. So the last like real contract was I don't know.
Hayward?
Hayward. Yeah, I mean Hayward and Zobrist back in 2015, like the 2015 to 2016. So wow. That's outrageous. You're a big market team. Like you're supposed to be spending money. That comes down to the ownership. And I mean we're ragging on the GM, but like it comes down to shitty ownership group, man. Just a really bad ownership group.
And I don't think next year we're getting anyone either. If we do anything, we're buying like rentals. We're buying like the Jock Petersons and trading them away again at the deadline.
Fun.
Yeah.
So do you guys actually believe that the Cubs offered Bryant, KB, or Rizzo decent extension like that are worth it at all? No.
I think there was talks at one point, but I think they were both just like a football field away, and that was it. It's like in the off season, and I don't even think like they really gave it a try. Yeah, I think rumors, Rizzo probably more with any of them, but yeah.
I think there's rumors about like the Bryant getting $300 million offer, but Baez getting $200 million. No, that didn't happen. There's no way on earth that happened. And I can maybe believe the rumor about Anthony Rizzo getting a $100 million offer, but you got to remember, like, Anthony Rizzo is not on the same track as what Bryant and Baez were. Rizzo signed a team-friendly extension way back in, like, 2014, I believe it was. Super team-friendly. Like, he was getting paid, like, less than $15 million a year or something like that. And so if he's offered $100 million over the course of 5 years, like, that's still not enough money, especially to make up for the fact that he was on a super team-friendly deal beforehand. So I don't think legitimate offers were made to any of those guys. I mean, I don't have any, like, I'm not your insider on the contract negotiations, but right. I can be if you want me to be.
With how like fondly they talk about Chicago, I feel like if any of those deals were made, they would have taken them.
Yeah,
right. I think so too. But I just want to get your opinion on that. We've heard what Hoyer has said. We've heard what the players have said. I mean, I choose to side with the players, but. And I'm sure you guys do too. So let's talk about these trades a little bit. How surprised were you that Rizzo was the first one out of everybody to be dealt?
Man, that hit me, dude. That hit me. Like that was on the Thursday. The trade deadline was Friday. The Rizzo trade was Thursday, and I saw that one, and that was. I mean, we'd already traded like Andrew Chafin and Ryan Tepera, but those are a couple like middle relievers compared to these other guys. And when the Rizzo trade, when I was scrolling through Twitter, I refreshed my feed and it said Rizzo traded the Yankees. Like I think it was like Ken Rosenthal. I mean, you gotta wait on like Ken Rosenthal or like some of those guys. Like, you're not waiting on Bob Nightingale to tweet this out because that's
it'll be
not
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when I saw like Rosenthal tweet that, it was like that just kind of hit me because going into this deadline, it was like, all right, if anybody is going to sign an extension, if anybody is going to be kept around, it's going to be Anthony Rizzo. So as soon as Rizzo went, it was kind of like everybody got traded at that exact moment. You know what I mean? Because since he was gone, they're all gone. And I don't know. And especially coming from a guy that, I mean, Anthony Rizzo was the face of the franchise. He was the captain of the team that broke the 108-year drought. He was, I mean, if he would have stayed in Chicago, if they didn't trade him away, he'd have a statue out front of Wrigley Field. And so for that trade to go through first was kind of like, that was the weight of the world. Is like, wow, like that's kind of insane, you know?
Yeah, I remember we just recorded our last podcast before the deadline, and I remember mentioning that there's a chance that Rizzo got traded. And I remember kind of after saying that being like, oh, I'm going to look like an idiot. Like, I still almost didn't believe it. I don't know. I feel like there's always still those doubts after, like, when you're going into the deadline. Like, I knew or like had a pretty good idea like Baez and Bryant were going to be gone, and then like Kimbrel maybe or like Chafin, but I don't know. Like, when Rizzo was the first one to be traded, that's when like it all hit me. Like, wow, like we are trading everyone on the roster. Like, literally everyone on the Cubs team right now is on the block. If a team is interested, like, we will hear an offer, and that's like, I don't know. That's definitely like when it hit me.
Hey, take it easy. Zach Davies is still on the roster. Chill.
If anyone wanted Zach Davies would be gone. Like, we traded Trevor Williams. Like, Davies wasn't. I'm pretty sure we wanted to like just throw Davies into like the Mets, and the Mets were like, no.
Nah, fam, we're all right.
Would you guys say the Rizzo deal hurt the most for Cubs fans?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think seeing all three of those main guys in other uniforms sucks. I've said it. I've said it before. It's my view of those three guys is you got, as far as wanting extensions with those players, like if you're thinking with your head, like Kris Bryant is your guy because he's the best player out there, right? Like he's the best player of those three options. If you're thinking with your heart, you got Anthony Rizzo because like he's the captain of the team, he's everybody's favorite player. And then if you're thinking with your dick, then you're thinking about Javy Baez, and because he's just like he's so exciting to watch, and you love watching him take the field, right? But I think Rizzo of that group is like that. That was kind of the dagger in everybody's hearts, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like Rizzo, if we just signed him to like a long-term deal, it would have been the cheapest. Like, he has a really good glove at first base. Like, we can still get like 5 good years out of him. Like, when we're starting to kind of contend again. So I kind of had like an idea, like maybe we would try something like that, but no, we gutted everyone. Yeah, everyone's gone. But yeah, I agree with Greg. Like, I think if you're thinking with your brain, Bryant's the one that makes the most sense. Just like his defensive flexibility, his bats. I mean, he can just do everything well. He can play short for you. He can play center field for you. He can do anything you want. And that's the one that I think, I don't know. They all hurt like in their own like special way. I don't know. I don't know if I can pick one that was like the worst, but
yeah, Andy, it's like you're saying like which pet dying do you like the most? Like,
yeah,
I hate all of them. They all suck.
Jesus Christ! All right, the Chicago Cubs are Greg's pets. That's what we're comparing them to. They are human beings, Greg. You said it. You don't like looking at them in their new uniforms. Which Cub looks the weirdest in his new uniform?
Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah.
Because I just always. I mean, there were trade rumors circling Bryant for a while, so I got to mentally prepare for that over the last 3 years. Javy Baez just looks damn good in
he
that,
does.
In the New York
He
Mets.
just looks like he's having fun.
Yeah,
and especially he's rocking 23. Like, that's swaggy as fuck. Him and Lindor. Honestly, I thought Kris Bryant made more sense for the Mets than Javy Baez did, but I mean, to each its own.
But seeing Baez and Lindor is once Lindor becomes healthy, whew,
that's going to be the swaggiest infield the major leagues have ever seen.
And it's like, who likes the Yankees besides like douchebags, honestly? So
Duke
like
fans?
that, yeah, exactly. Like, like all
Los
the Yankees
Angeles
fans I
Lakers
know
and
from
Dallas
Illinois
Cowboys
are just like assholes. So like just seeing Rizzo in a Yankees uniform, it's like, I don't know. I feel like that one definitely hurts. Like no one in Illinois is just like a Mets fan, you know?
Right.
Like you don't just meet like a casual person walking around like I don't know. And here in Illinois, like Indianapolis, like, yeah, I fucking love the Mets. Like, it's, I don't know. It's just those people that are like Yankees fans that just like, I don't know. They just get whatever they want. They're like bratty kids. And at least like that's a Yankee fan, I imagine. And now like Rizzo's just hitting like tanks for him. It's, I don't know. I think that's the worst part.
Yeah. I do have a pretty good buddy that is a Yankees fan, but he is from New York, so I think he gets a pass.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, if I ever think of a Yankees fan, I think backwards 5950 flat bill. They have the jersey on with no shirt under it, with at least 2 or 3 buttons undone, and then it has to be at least 1 gold chain. Like that is the Yankee fan.
And he's 24, and his girlfriend turns 18 in a month.
Yeah. Oh my God! All right, that's fucking hilarious. Holy, so what are there any deals that you didn't like as far as the return goes, or maybe giving someone up you think you shouldn't have? I guess that's probably a dumb question because I know you guys didn't really want to give up the 3 guys we've been talking about. Or was maybe there anyone you were hoping got traded that is still on the roster, i.e. Zach Davies?
I think with the Bryant trade, there was like that rumor that came out and that we were getting Joey Bart. So then once we like actually looked at what we were getting, that one hurt a little bit more. Because you know who Joey Bart is. He's like one of like the top catchers and like prospect in like all of baseball. So I was like, oh shit, we're getting Joey Bart for him. Like that's awesome. But it ended up being Canario, who's off to like a really, really good start with us right now. And Caleb Killian, who just put up like ridiculous numbers with the Giants. So like we got good returns, I think, with all the players. And I think time will tell like who wins the trade, just, you know, seeing how these guys progress through the minors. But I don't know. I don't feel like very strongly either way about like a trade. Like if we had to trade these guys, I don't feel like we could have gotten that much more or like that much less.
That's very mature of you. I kind of feel the same way though. There was no trade return where I was like, oh, like this is a really bad return. But I guess that a lot of people were saying like the Anthony Rizzo trade was the best return, and I think that, I don't know how you feel, Jimmy, but I feel like the Kris Bryant trade was actually my favorite. Alexander Canario is in high A ball and he's fun as hell. I mean, like he has a lot of power. He strikes out quite a bit, but he's got a lot of power. He is pretty fast. He can play the outfield. He's got an arm. He's pretty good. And then Caleb Killian, like Jimmy said, is like just incredible stats during his time with San Francisco. So I really like that trade for Kris Bryant. You're not expecting to get as much back for some of those relievers, right? Like Ryan Tepera, we got one guy that like named Bailey Horn, who is like a guy who's outside the top 30 prospects. But it's also for 1 year, like a half a season of a relief pitcher. So you're not expecting to get a ton back for that. You know what I mean? So there was no trades that I was like, this is awful. But there were also no trades where I was like jumping off the walls because I was so excited about them, you know?
Yeah, I think the one I was the most excited about was with the Mets, with Baez and Williams for Pete Crow Armstrong. I feel like Cubs fans in particular, like don't like him as much because he gets like that kind of comp to Almora because he has such a good glove and is just like a very like contact heavy kind of guy, and like can run the bases pretty well. But I don't know. I view him as a lot better of like a replacement than like what Almora would be in center field. Like I think he can be our future center fielder for sure. And I don't know. I think that was the guy like I was the most excited about too, because he was the same draft as Ed Howard, and what would that be?
Last year.
2020. So he was drafted like a couple spots, I believe, behind Howard. So he was a guy too that like just doing draft prep for our draft show. Like he's a guy I looked at a lot and I really liked him. And I'm sure the Cubs did too for, you know, acquiring him now. I'm sure we did a lot of like draft prep with him. And, you know, if Howard was taken earlier, who knows? He could have been in our system before. But I think that's the guy I was most excited about. And he got a little bit of a taste in A-ball and was off to a really good start. And he's only 19. So there's still a lot of room. I don't think he's going to make his debut for another like 3 or 4 years. But yeah, I think I was most excited about PCA. It's my boy.
Pete Crow Armstrong. Hell of a name. I actually have a friend that's a Mets fan, also from New York, that was pissed off when they gave up PCA for Baez. He was not a fan of the deal. Which of these prospects they just acquired do you guys believe have like the fastest path of to Chicago?
We saw Greg Dykman, who was acquired in the Andrew Chafin deal, already debut in Chicago this past week, which is kind of cool to see. You get a little taste. Like, he's not a high upside guy at all. Like, he's not going to be a middle of the order bat for the Cubs for a decade. You know what I mean? But to get a little bit like immediate return and a guy that's already in Chicago, it kind of puts some fans at ease a little bit. But outside of that guy who's already there, Caleb Killian, who we mentioned from the Giants and the KB deal, probably has the best. He in my mind is the best like combination of like high upside and also like pretty close to the majors of anybody we got at the deadline. Because we got a lot of like teenagers who we won't see until like 2025, and I feel like that's a trend we keep coming back to 2025. But yeah, Caleb Killian, I would say, in addition to like Dykman, who's already there in Chicago.
All right.
Yeah, I think everyone else is probably like at least like 2 or 3 years away. Like we got Vizcaíno from the Yankees, and he was on the Yankees 40 man. He's 24, but he hasn't been above like high A. What else we got? We got Palencia. He's 21, I think, and he's part of the Chafin trade, I believe. We got so many players too. It's like kind of hard to like keep track, but yeah, he's part of the Chafin trade, and he threw like 100 on Sunday, but he's only 21, and he pretty much like just has a fastball at this point. But I think we could see him probably like in 2 or 3 years. I think he's probably going to like end up transitioning to the bullpen. But yeah, other than that, like we got a lot of like young guys, which I think also kind of shows when we're kind of thinking about contending again too. I think it's going to be around like 2024, especially when we have like a lot more room to kind of buy free agents.
Yeah. Andy, me and Jimmy were talking about on our last episode of the Growing Cubs about Daniel Palencia, who you just mentioned, is throwing 100 miles an hour. He's outside like the Cubs' top 30 prospects. Like he's not a top guy. And it's like the difference in baseball now. I brought up Joel Zamaya. Do you remember Joel Zamaya back with the Tigers? And it was back in like when they were going to the World Series in like the late 2000s. And Joel Zamaya would come in out of the bullpen throwing 100 miles an hour every single pitch. And it was like the most amazing thing. Like, watching a guy throw 100 miles an hour was not something that happened back then. And now the Cubs have a prospect who's 21 years old, throwing 100 miles an hour, and is not even like remotely close to their top prospect list, which is like that. It's just wild where like baseball has gone.
Yeah, we also got Little who hit 104. He's not in our top 30 either.
Yeah, 104.
So, I mean, we're definitely like loading up on power arms right now. It's definitely something you can see in the system, but yeah, it is kind of crazy. I'll take your Jules Amaya and Razia and Eric Gagne, if you remember him.
Ooh. Oh yeah,
high 90s kind of guy too. And that dude's like
the rec specs, dude.
That guy was like gas. He was like above and beyond anyone else's fastball, and now that's just like the 7th inning guy for like the A's now or something.
Dude, Eric Gagne would not even like have a job in the major leagues, and he was like one of the best closers of his era.
Yeah.
So what do all these trades, what do all these moves mean for some of the top prospects that were already in the Cubs system that you didn't have to acquire? Do their timelines to the majors get bumped up a little bit, or do you think Hoyer and the Cubs front office is just kind of content sitting and waiting for everybody?
I think all these trades haven't actually really affected the Cubs system in terms of timelines for other guys all that much. Especially because, I mean, hoping that the team competes fairly soon here. I just don't think it's affected too much. The vast majority of the guys acquired kind of fit. I mean, when we talk about like top prospect lists, but a lot of times we talk about like top 30s in their system, right? And so the Cubs had a lot of guys that were really good in like the 25 to like 50 range, like a lot of like really good depth in their farm system. Guys that are not going to be superstars, but can fill the back end of like a major league roster. And then they had like Brennan Davis and a couple other guys at the very top that are like elite type players. They were kind of missing that like middle ground. Like they didn't have a lot in the middle ground between like 5 and 15 or so. And a lot of these guys acquired fit that like 5 to 15 range. And so I think that they've kind of filled out their system a little bit better, a little bit more like even throughout like the levels. And so I don't know that this really affects too much like the timelines of anybody or the rankings of anybody or anything like that. I just think it kind of fills a gap in what the system has right now. And that could help out in the long run where I've talked about how the Cubs, when they went for it in 2016, everybody was arriving at the same time, right? The entire, like when they won that World Series, everybody was arriving between like 2014 and 2017. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked for the 2016 World Series, but then it fell apart after that. Where you look at a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they're like prepared to win every single year for the next like decade because they just have like 2 or 3 guys coming up every single season. They're like, where are these guys coming from? It's they're developing their system all throughout the levels of the minor league, and I think that might be where the Cubs are going with this. Which if you're modeling your system off of what the Los Angeles Dodgers do, like I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every World Series team
every year.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was gonna say, I feel like every like World Series team always has like that really good rookie that's like playing at like an all-star caliber level, like on a rookie like contract. So it's like very needed for teams, I believe, just to like have some more like flexibility in who they can go out and get in free agency. And like Greg said, if we can have those kind of guys just coming up in the system, even if it's just like one guy every year, like that's huge for a major league roster. If you can have that like kind of cheap guy that can play at like an all-star caliber, not even like an all-star caliber, like just a starting like caliber kind of level for that cheap and go out and get, those all-stars, like that's huge. But like going back to your question, I don't think this really affects like a lot of like the top prospects in the system. I think it sucks for like a lot of the guys like at the bottom that were kind of just like jockeying just to like kind of stay like in affiliated like pro ball. Because like now with like rosters cut and stuff, there's a lot of guys too that don't really like have the opportunity to play like professional baseball. So those guys like that fourth outfielder in like high A is like going to be like a little like screwed over from these deals. But as far as like timeline goes and like how this affects like our top prospects and like where they'll play or how many innings they'll get, I don't think that really changes much with them.
So after all these moves, where do you guys rank the Cubs system as a whole as far as Major League Baseball goes?
I'd say probably around like the 8 to 12 range, probably. I don't think this has catapulted them to like a top 5 system in all of baseball. They've dealt, like I mentioned earlier, they've dealt with a lot of injuries, and that has hurt them really bad. We're like, you're expecting, there's 5 to 8 guys that you were expecting to have really good years this year and kind of really bounce up prospect list that have been injured all year long and they can't, So I feel like the system hasn't performed super well this year. So you're still looking like between 8 to 10 range of baseball.
Yeah, I agree with Greg there. And I think those guys especially like didn't really rise. Like Greg said, like guys that have kind of been injured this year. But also there's a lot of like young guys that we talked about, like teenagers in the Arizona Complex League that aren't even in like full season ball right now. And I think once those guys like next year have like a full season under their belts, and I think more of like a wider audience of like guys that really follow prospects can see like a full season from them, I think those guys are going to start climbing on lists here pretty soon. And I think that's going to kind of catapult our list up there, because a lot of those guys down there too, I think can be like top 100 prospects in all of baseball. It's just kind of them just having that experience of, full season ball. Cause it's a little harder to like evaluate those kind of guys, when they're like 17, 18, 19 years old and, they're not even playing like a full season of pro ball.
These are teenagers, they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it hurt this system that they never really produced that like next wave of young talent after the 2016 championship, especially on the mound, with pitchers, and they kind of traded away a lot of younger guys that they did have to fill some holes to kind of try to sustain that winning window? Do you think that has an effect on this system still? And I mean, probably the makeup of this roster.
Yeah.
I think that the development team kind of, I think that the development staff and team and all that good stuff, the front office, I think they kind of rested a little bit when they got all that talent up in Chicago in 2016. I think that when they did that, they allowed other organizations to like surpass them in terms of their development of prospects, whether they're top prospects or not top prospects. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, I mean, you're just doomed. Like you have to draft good guys, obviously, but you also have to make sure that they're ready for the big leagues. And I just don't think they did that. So I think that's where you have that issue. Since then, the front office has kind of remolded that staff, and it's a lot different now, a lot nerdier now with advanced analytics and stuff like that. So I think that they're at a better place now than they were in, say, like 2018, probably, with the way they develop players.
Yeah, and we absolutely gutted like our minor league team to trade for like guys too. I mean, wasn't like Oscar De La Cruz like a top prospect for us at one point or something like that? Like we just completely like gutted everyone in the minors just to try and like get that player to, help us compete, which I'm okay with, but it left us kind of building our system from scratch again. And, it's taken a few years for us to even kind of get to like a mid-tier system. And I think, the trade deadline this year kind of pushed us like one step further, but we're still really not there yet. And like Greg said, like with the Dodgers, there are teams that can go out and they can like get those major league players and still like have those guys that can come up through the system and even use those guys as like trade pieces at the deadline. Like I'm okay with that. Like we did the Dylan Cease and, Eloy trade. We did Gleyber Torres trade. Like those were good trades that helped us win. Got us a World Series when we traded Torres, to get Chapman. So like I'm okay with those kind of trades, but you still need guys in the system. I think we kind of showed that like you can't have like one of the worst systems in baseball and still like have a really good major league team or like have a good major league team like in a longer window. Like you can for like a year or two, but I think that was like really like our downfalls. Like we never really had like another good piece. Like we had our draft pick, like we could look forward to like Nico going up, but like even like when me and Greg started, our podcast, like our system was pretty not good. Like we had Nico Horner, and I feel like that is all we talked about, like some episodes. And it's just nice to see us like kind of have like a more full system. Like I think we're still missing some guys like at the top, and I think, like I said before, like those teenagers can kind of come in and be those guys, but. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah.
You answered it. Well, you answered the question.
I rambled along the way, connected some dots, but
yeah. So, team's been basically gutted. Hoyer has talked about he's been through a rebuild with Chicago before. Do you guys see any similarities between this rebuild or the last one that brought the Cubs to 2016 World Series? I know it's super early in it, but you're already shaking your head no, Greg.
No, because the other rebuild, there weren't actually good players on the roster to begin with. This rebuild started with Kris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and Javy Baez. The other one started with Scott Feldman and Paul Maholm. So, like, I mean,
legends.
It's like the leadoff guy on those teams was like Emilio Bonifacio. So, it's a much different vibe. Jed Hoyer in the front office has been like super careful about not calling it a rebuild, and like you can call it whatever the hell you want to call it. Like it's a rebuild. Like when you trade your entire roster of good players, like what do you call that? Like it's called a rebuild because you're starting from nothing and you have to build up. Now, just because it's rebuild doesn't mean they look the same, but it's just. Yeah, I'm at the point where Andy, you're killing me. You're killing me. I haven't shed a tear, so we're good. But it's just rough because you have a talented roster already. You don't need to rebuild from that. It's like the rebuild versus retool thing that always gets tossed around, right? Where the Dodgers don't even retool. The Yankees retool, right? The Cardinals retool, and they're a small market team. The Cardinals retool at like now this year wasn't very good with Jay Happ and John Lester, but
legends.
Like they retool every year, and with an organization with the Cardinals though, the best fans in baseball, you have to
baseball heaven.
You have to like always compete year in and year out, because if the Cardinals have a year where they go 62-100, if they have a really, really bad record, they're not going to get fans in that stadium. Like you can claim like that fans will be there every single day, no matter what, win or lose. But like if the Cardinals lose 100 games, like 3 straight years, they will have no fans.
Yeah, they will.
So they can't.
I will argue right now, even with the mediocrity, I know we're not talking about the Cardinals, but if they play 500 ball, they still will get at least 75% capacity in that fucking stadium. And that is why, in my opinion, Mozeliak has been so okay with the mediocrity of the past 5 years, because he knows we're still going to be top 5 in attendance or whatever.
But I think it's because they're like the front office of the Cardinals is tricking is a weird word. Like he's putting on like the disguise that the Cardinals are competing for a World Series, right?
Yeah, but they're not.
Exactly. When you go out and acquire, it's look, we're acquiring John Lester. Like they're not gonna do anything by acquiring John Lester. Like I love the guy, greatest free agent signing in Chicago Cubs history, but like he's 53 years old and like he's not gonna win you a World Series.
Was that signing pretty gross for you guys? Did you see that and we're just like, ugh?
With Lester going to the Cardinals.
With Lester going to the Cardinals, yes.
Oh my God, it was like. All the other that was like the last trade announced on that on trade deadline day, and it was like I was reeling off of like Rizzo and Bryant and Baez dealt, and I was like, oh, also the Cardinals get John Lester. It's like it just that did it for me. That put me over the top.
Looking back, it's kind of incredible just how much of just like a just burning dumpster fire like the 2012 Cubs were. Like no one in the system, like no one on the major league roster. Like we literally had like nothing. We made the Cashman trade for Rizzo. We still had Baez in the system. I think that's when we drafted Almora, and then we had like Brett Jackson and Josh Fitters. And then
Joe Mather was on that major league roster, so shout out.
Yeah. Like I remember watching the major league roster, and like David DeJesus was like my favorite player.
Dude, we were throwing out some names here. This is some high quality. This is why you got us on here, right, Andy?
Of course, I need these. I need these obscure fucking names. Is he still on the broadcast team, DeJesus? Like the pregame show?
He got
shit canned by Marquee.
He didn't come over when Marquee took over. He was with NBC Sports Chicago or whatever.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. He was
awful. He was so bad.
Not a good broadcaster, but a really great guy on the field. He did everything right. Just took his walk, had a real good approach to the plate, played some solid defense.
It was really great for that rebuilding Cubs.
He really just mentored the young
Cardinals
guys
at one point too, wasn't he?
He played for everyone.
Yeah, he was he'd been on the block.
Quickly, most obscure Chicago Cub off the top of your head right now.
Oh, I think Cody Ransom is probably what I'll go with. I mean, Cubs legend Cody Ransom. Sorry, I misspoke.
Oh God. I'm thinking too much now. Coy Hill.
Legendary. So if that's what I hope that's what all the listeners were here for. Just seeing how many just names that you have to go. Who the fuck was that?
You were a big Rafael Dolis guy.
He is still on the Blue Jays right now, though. He developed a splitter over in Japan or Korea, and then got re-signed to a major league team. It's just been filthy. I remember that's where I got the term bowling ball sinker from Jim DeShays when he was announcing, or like when he's broadcasting.
Rafael Dolis.
Yeah, because when you hit it, it feels like you're swinging at a bowling ball and you break bats and your hands are ringing. Fun fact.
So I do have a few more questions for you guys about Javy, KB, and Rizzo. But before we do that, I got a couple more questions about the Cubs and kind of the direction you think they're going to go in this offseason. So free agency, do you think they'll be aggressive at all? Do you think they're going to try to spend any money? Maybe try to re-sign one of these guys that they just traded away? Do you think they go after another big name, let's say a shortstop, a guy like Corey Seager, a guy like Trevor Story, and then, or any position really, to kind of speed up this process of the rebuild that they don't want to call it?
I think he's going to be in a very bad position, Jed is, with having to somewhat appear that we're trying without really trying. Like, I think we're going to have to almost like pull like the Cardinals kind of in a way. Like, I don't think we're going to go out and we're going to get like, Trevor Story, like on a big deal or something like that. But we also want to sell tickets. Like, I don't think we're going to go back to like a 2012 kind of roster. So I think we'll get some like mid-tier kind of free agents on like short deals, maybe trade them at the deadline. And we can kind of say like, oh, well, this season, this particular season didn't work out, but we still went out and we got some guys. Like, I think we're going to get some dudes, but we're not getting that big, like, contract. Like, we're not going out and getting, like, the crown jewel of the free agent market. I think it's just gonna be nothing but like mid-tier guys, and they're not gonna be longer than like a 1 or 2 year deal.
I think they could go out and sign guys this offseason and then compete for a playoff spot in 2022. Maybe not necessarily a World Series, but I think they can go out and sign some guys and put together a good roster. I don't think they're going to do that though. I think I'm kind of with Jimmy. I think they're gonna fake it till they make it, like a la St. Louis Cardinals, and keep some fans happy, bring them to the stadium, and then trade off at the deadline and say, "Oh no, really, we're going for it in 2023. This is real," and then we'll have the same discussion this time next year. You can book us for the podcast this time next year.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to look at the numbers, but I feel like I've had you two on almost more than anybody. I mean, besides Ryan Maloney, who did like the weekly show with me, but you guys are recurring guests, and by the definition of recurring guests. So yeah, we will book that for next year when you guys are 62 and 100 and in last place behind the Pirates. So what, in your guys' opinion, what is the biggest need in the organization? It could be positional, it could be in the front office, it could be coaching. What do you guys think?
Power. I think just in general, we need a lot more power in our system. And we've done a good job about going out and getting those guys. Like a year ago, like before the 2020 draft, we had literally no one with power in our system. And I think we're making a conscious effort right now to go out and get some like power bats. And we acquired them at the deadline too. But I don't know. I don't think you can ever have too much power in your system. And it's still one of those areas that's kind of lacking right now. And kind of going out and getting like another big like first base bat or like third, like a corner infielder or like a corner outfielder that can just hit tanks, I think is kind of what we need in the system.
Yeah, the Cubs acquired the guy for Jock Peterson that was acquired. He is a country farm boy from Iowa, and his nickname is Ball Bunyan because his name is Bryce Ball, and his nickname is Ball Bunyan, and he's 6'6" and like 240 pounds. Like this dude is massive, and like that's all he does. Like he is for like power. Like that's why they acquired him. But I agree with you, Jimmy. I made the joke that when they traded at the deadline, they got like Nick Madrigal from the White Sox. They got PCA from the Mets, guys that are very like contact oriented. They also got some power, but like they got those the contact oriented approach. And I made the joke. I was like, oh wow, they got some real good, nice contact hitters. All they need is some power. They should go out this offseason and sign a guy like Kris Bryant or Anthony Rizzo. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that I'll add in they could really use some like top of the rotation starting pitching maybe. We talked about Braylon Marquez that way a little bit. He got a cup of tea in 2020 in Chicago. I kind of view him more as a reliever, though, potentially. Cole Franklin is a guy that Jimmy and I really, really like in the Cubs system, but he's been injured all year long. So getting some more, I mean, just like power, you can never, ever, ever have too much starting pitching. So getting some more of that injected in the system might be good. Yeah, I'll go with that.
All right. So we're going to jump back a little bit here. We're going to talk about Javy, KB, and Rizzo. So was it hard for you guys, or I mean, I guess, is it hard for you guys to see them doing so well for their new teams? Like, are you even able to watch, or does it make you a little too emotional?
Couldn't avoid it. It was like, oh wow, Anthony Rizzo homered for his new team. Oh wow, Javy Baez homered for his new team on the first day. Kris Bryant did the same thing. It's like it was just all over Twitter. It's like for someone who's a loser like me and spends all his time on Twitter, it's like I could not escape it. And but I will say I'm very happy they're doing that. I think it's just like a big FU to the face of Jed Hoyer, right? Like that's how I view it. I'm a players guy, and to see those three of my favorite players of all time go out and succeed with their new team, I dig it. Like it sucks from a Cubs fan perspective, but it's also awesome from a perspective of I really like those three guys, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a lot worse seeing like Baez like injure his hip, or like seeing like Rizzo catch COVID, which is, it's a whole different like kind of can of worms. But yeah, just seeing those guys do well like for another team, it's a little bit bittersweet, but I don't know. It's like a breakup. You're like real happy for them after you've cried for a week or two. You're glad they're seeing other people.
You're in the acceptance stage of grieving right now. So if we look at their numbers really quick, I'm not going to throw out a bunch of numbers here, just their slash line. So Rizzo with the Cubs was hitting 248, 346 OPB, 446 slug, and 792 OPS. That was in 92 games with the Cubs. He hit 14 home runs, had 40 RBIs. With the Yankees in 9 games, in 32 at-bats, he has 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. He's hitting 281 with a 400 OBP, 563 slug percentage, and 963 OPS. He had the Chicago batting gloves on, the cleats on. Like, that just has to add insult to injury. Do you think that he is going to end up signing an extension with the New York Yankees?
Nah, not with the Yankees. I don't know that he'll end up back with the Cubs, but I mean, I guess there's a possibility. I don't know where he's going to end up, but you're right. I think that for him to age well throughout the back end of his career, it might be a pretty good move to stay in New York with the Yankees. I mean, they've got that really short porch in right field that as his power starts to diminish a little bit, he could do a whole lot worse than playing in that short porch in right field in New York. So from if I was his agent advising him, I'd be like, hey, take a long look at playing for the Yankees long term. But I don't know. It's a pretty good matchup. I don't know where he ends up going though.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I feel like the Yankees is just a really good fit for him. Like, he's going to give you, especially for a long-term deal, he's going to give you some more Gold Glove defense for the next 3 or 4 years. He can still DH. Like Greg said, they play in a sandbox, so every fly ball into right field's leaving the park. So, I mean, he can hit you 30, 40 dongs every year, give you some good defense, and just be a fan favorite because he's Anthony Rizzo. So I feel like the Yankees is a good fit for him, but at this point in free agency, I think it's just whoever offers the most money. And also, I'd be very happy for him just making as much money as he can get because the Cubs really didn't give him that much.
Yeah. Right. And I think of those big three, I think that I view him as the least likely to stay with the team he's currently with. I think that Javy Baez would love playing side by side with Francisco Lindor for the next 8 years. I think that would be fun. I think he'd enjoy that. And then Kris Bryant grew up a San Francisco Giants fan. So him finishing out his career, playing in the next however many years with a team he grew up rooting for is probably pretty fun for a guy like Kris Bryant. So they all ended up in pretty good spots, all things considered. And it's unfortunate as a Cubs fan, but happy for those guys, I guess.
Yeah,
I do feel like I just broke up with a girlfriend that is named Anthony Rizzo, Kris Bryant, and Javy Baez.
So if we look at Baez's numbers next, so 91 games with the Cubs this year. He had 22 home runs, 65 RBIs, was hitting 248, 292 OBP, 484 slug, and 775 OPS. Did have 131 strikeouts though, so he does love swinging at the balls in the dirt. With the Mets, he's played 9 games. Like Jimmy mentioned earlier, he's dealing with kind of a hip injury. He's only hitting 176. He has 13 strikeouts already, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. Are you guys surprised by this since his move to New York?
Absolutely not. There was some people I saw some, he had that game. It was 4 or 5 strikeouts, and I saw some just people on Twitter, Mets fans, just bitching about just how much he strikes out. It's you just don't understand yet. You don't even know what's coming, Mets fans. You don't even deserve him right now. So there's a little bit of that, but I'm not surprised. He's real streaky. I mean, he could be batting 150 and striking out 40% of the time one week, and then the next week he's to be batting 400 and he's gonna hit 6 home runs. That's just how Baez is.
Yeah.
You just take it with how it comes. I mean, because that he brings the other parts of the game. I mean, the defense, the base running, the power. Those things are gonna come no matter what. So you just got to deal with the strikeouts. I mean. No player is perfect. I mean, unless you're Mike Trout, is perfect in every way. His are just much more glaring. It's really good power, but he strikes out a lot. It's really good defense, but he'll make a bonehead play every once in a while. It's just very extreme with Javier Baez, and the net is that he's a really good player, but it's a weird looking route to get there.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. Just interesting. I know he's dealing with the hip thing, and that change of scenery has to be very different for all of these guys, and you hope they take advantage of it, at least as best as possible. And then if we look at Bryant, we'll do his numbers and we'll close it out here. He's played 8 games with the Giants. He's hitting .323. He has a home run, 3 RBIs with the Cubs. He played 93 games. He had 89 strikeouts. Of course, I mentioned that first, but 267 batting average, 358 OPB, 503 slug percentage. So his numbers have also jumped up once he's gotten to the Giants. Do you think he solidifies San Francisco as a legit contender for the NL West to actually win that division and maybe make some noise in the postseason?
I don't understand the Giants, dude.
Yeah.
I don't get them. Like they the Dodgers and the Padres are clearly better teams than the San Francisco Giants.
Mm-hmm.
But here the Giants are now. I mean, coming up on what 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through the season, and they have the best record in baseball, right? Like that. I don't understand it. I mean, it doesn't hurt having a former MVP and a guy who has performed, whether fans want to admit this or not, but has played better in years following his MVP award. It doesn't hurt having a guy like that on your roster. So I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the Giants going after it and trying to win with a pretty old roster, right? Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey and Evan Longoria, guys like that that have aged out like 3 different times along the way, right? Like, but I mean, the Dodgers are just so damn good. I would still at this point be shocked if the Dodgers don't come back and win the division.
Yeah, I don't know really who's like winning that division, but having Bryant on your team's never going to be a bad thing. And I feel like he does fit really well in like San Francisco, just in that ballpark where he can play defensively. Like he can play you a good left, he can play you some third base, and just how big the dimensions are in that park. I feel like that just plays really well. Like with Bryant, I feel like he's going to hit for a high average there, be able to like slug it a little bit better. Like, leg out some more triples, at least for now. I don't know if he signs an extension. I don't think he's going to be doing that in his like mid-30s, but yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy for him. And like with all these guys, I just really want to see them like get to the playoffs and like do something special there. If they're not going to do it like with the Cubs, I'd rather them watch him do it with another team.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I mean, when Kris Bryant played for the Cubs, there was nothing that I enjoyed watching more than him going first to home on like a Anthony Rizzo double. Like that was like sexual. Like that first to home, like because he is just. I mean, that's an underrated part about KB's game is like his base running. Like it's so good. Like he's so fast. He's so like fluid on the base pads. But he's gonna score first to home on a double at Oracle Park? Is that what they're calling it in San Francisco? Easy now because those alleys are so deep. He's gonna walk across home plate at this point. Like he's just so smooth out there.
Just think, every time Kris Bryant goes first to home, Greg is fully torqued. Oh yeah. So where do Baez, Bryant, and Rizzo rank as all-time Cubs?
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah,
you can go, Greg.
I think stat-wise, I mean, they're going to ultimately not be as great of stats as some of the other guys, but I mean, you have to give them more credit because they were part of the team that made history and brought a World Series title. Anthony Rizzo is, regardless of if he signs back with the Cubs this offseason, like he's going to be like a Cubs legend. And like I joke around like, oh, Cody Ransom is a Cubs legend, like Joe Mather, a Cubs like legitimately, like I think Anthony Rizzo will be like a Cubs legend no matter where he signs this offseason. Being the captain of a team that broke a world famous drought, like World Series drought, like that's nobody can say that, like nobody else can say that other than Anthony Rizzo. So all these guys, you got to look at stats and all that stuff, but there's more than just stats with a lot of these guys. I think Baez probably ranks of the 3 probably the lowest in like Cubs lore, but I mean, just because Bryant came up and won Rookie of the Year, then won MVP. He was the MVP of the league the year the Cubs won the World Series. So those 2 guys kind of probably rank above, but I don't know where to rank them in terms of all-time Cubs right now.
Yeah, I'm not a big like Cubs historian or like anything like that. Like when I started watching baseball, we had like Soriano, Zambrano, Derek Lee. Like, that's like my starting points. So where they're at now, like probably top 5. Like, I don't know who you could really like put up higher than that, especially when they're winning World Series. Like, I think Rizzo, I don't know. I'd probably rank Bryant a little bit higher than Rizzo just because, like you said, he got that MVP. Like, he won the World Series. Like, I think he is like the Cubs legend, but like Rizzo is always going to be like the captain, if that makes any sense. And then I think Baez would be like a third if like we're going off of like 2000 to now. But like as far as like comparing them to like Ron Santo or like Ernie Banks or something like that, like I can't really do that.
Yeah.
Anthony Rizzo is like what Cardinals fans think Yadier Molina is. So
I think we are. I'd be very shocked if Rizzo didn't sign with the Cubs again, even if it's like 7 years from now and we go out and just sign him on like a 1-year deal or something like that.
Just to end his career as a Cub.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. Well, on that note, do you think there's a chance any of these 3 guys re-sign with Chicago this offseason?
No. I don't feel like I don't feel more passionately about one versus the other that they will. I'm looking at Jed Hoyer and I just don't. And more importantly, I'm looking at the Ricketts ownership and how cheap they are and how far they fell out of graces by Cubs fans. I just don't expect anything from that ownership group at all. So I think I'm saying no more for my well-being. So when they don't, like, I can like not have to cry all over again, you know. But that's how I kind of stand, I guess.
Yeah, I will put it like 5% pre-Jed comments about trying to extend them, but after those, I'd put it like less than 1%. It's not happening.
Well, you guys heard it here, folks. This has been an incredible conversation about the Chicago Cubs and what is next for them. Before we get out of here, I want to give each of you guys, however long you need to just trash your awful City Connect uniforms.
Oh, Jimmy, I don't know how you feel about it. I haven't really talked to you about it.
I don't like them. Just the blue, like, I don't like the navy. The navy is just like hideous. I don't know. I just like don't really like associate that like with the Cubs, and I don't know. We've had better jerseys.
All right, my turn here.
Yeah, go for it.
They're awful, dude. Like, okay, so I feel this way about all uniforms, and the fact that you should not have uniforms that aren't like your main color scheme. There's very few exceptions. The Marlins City Connect uniforms are like red and like green or something like that. That's different because the Marlins have never had a color scheme as long as they've had a franchise, so that doesn't matter. They've changed like 8 different times. The White Sox City Connect uniforms are all like black and white, and they look fresh. I like that, but I feel like you should not have a color scheme ever. Alternate jerseys, whatever they are, that are different than your normal color scheme. It's why I hate the NBA and their uniforms, dude. I hate tuning into a playoff NBA game. I sound like an old man. I don't care. I hate tuning into a playoff NBA game and like the Bucks are wearing like light blue uniforms. Like, I'm not watching the Mavericks. Oh, I'm watching the Bucks. Like, what are we doing? Like, I hate that, and I hate with the NBA. It's like in 20 years from now, like right now, if you look back at like the 1980s, 1990s uniforms in the NBA. You have like some iconic uniforms, right? That people wear around now as like throwback uniforms. In 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there's not going to be those uniforms in the NBA because they had so many different, they had like 8 different types of uniforms. And I feel like Major League Baseball is going that route with their uniform like schemes and all that good stuff. And I hate it. That's a Nike, drawn out way to say I hate it.
I will say they are better than the Sorry, I got a FaceTime. They are better than the Players Weekend, like all white jerseys. Those I think are just like my least favorite jerseys of like all time. They are better than those, but they're still pretty terrible.
Yeah, that's a pretty low bar. Yeah.
Those were maybe the worst things I've ever seen. The All-Star uniforms weren't great either. I didn't love those, but
I just hated that they didn't wear their team's uniforms.
Yeah. That's what that is what they should do. So, boys, this has been incredible. Episode 71 of the Brew Party Podcast featuring the Growing Cubs podcast. Greg Huss, Jimmy Nelligan. Before we get out of here, let's plug Growing Cubs. Tell everybody where they can find the podcast, social media. Follow you guys on Twitter for any Cubs information that they might be thirsty for.
Yeah, you can find our podcast pretty much anywhere. You can just Google Growing Cubs. You can go on Cubs Insider and find it. Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. Probably missing something somewhere in there, but you can find the Growing Cubs pretty much anywhere. You can follow me on Twitter at Nelligan Jimmy. It's that right there, except it's going to be that and then that right there on Twitter.
And
incredible plug.
You can follow me on Twitter at Out of the Vines is my Twitter handle. Like Jimmy said, the Growing Podcast anywhere. We have an Instagram account, Growing Cubs Pod on Instagram. I've been trying to use that. I'll do some writing over at Cubs Insider. I've been trying to do some more writing as people have a bigger appetite for Cubs minor league stuff. So you're writing over at CubsInsider.com. I had a feature recently of Alfonso Rivas, who's a guy that I really like in the Cubs system. I got the chance to interview him, sat down with him over here in Columbus and chatted with him a little bit. So, Out of the Vines, Cubs Insider, Growing Cubs Podcast, anywhere where you find it.
And because Greg won't plug it, he also interviewed and chatted with the Cubs starting pitcher tomorrow night, Justin Steele. I don't know if he's done that write-up yet, but he's getting to it.
I have not made the article. I'm sure our bosses do not appreciate that, but I have not written the Justin Steele. Justin Steele's on the mound on Tuesday night in Chicago, pitching for the Cubs. I got a chance to chat with him when he was down in Iowa, kind of getting stretched out as a starting pitcher. Super insightful guy, super good guy to talk to, but I just have not had the chance. Life gets in the way sometimes. Haven't had a chance to write it up, but maybe after he makes his debut, everyone will love to hear what Justin Steele had to say. So
that's incredible. I always appreciate you guys joining the show. Always love your insight. The premier Chicago Cubs minor league podcast, just number 24 on the baseball charts, gentlemen. Just giving me chills just thinking about it. So incredible episode. We let you guys know what the hell is going on with the Chicago Cubs rebuild. I want to say on the way, but it's in the works, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll see how long it takes for them to, get back to relevance. We know the Cardinals are just going to be, God damn it, dude. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Can't end a show without Brew fucking barking. So
it's the Brew Party. It only makes sense.
This is the Brew Party. He's got to make his appearance. So episode 71 of the Brew Party podcast with Growing Cubs is available now wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio. Just go to www.thebrewparty.com. You can find all of our social media links. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Brew Party. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Brew Party. We're on Facebook at The Brew Party Podcast. Subscribe to the youtube.com/The Brew Party. What a fucking joke, dude. All right. We're getting out of here. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whatever. However you're consuming this, however we're penetrating your ears, your eyes. I appreciate it. And thank you.